Jennifer Taylor of the City Law Department, and Debbie Hightower is our recording secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You're welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover or approval, have already been heard, or are perceived by the planning board to be non-controversial, therefore will be read and voted on without the opportunity for your testimony. If you wish to testify, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. When each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard in the order in which it appears on the regular agenda after we go through the consent cases. When the case is heard, you'll have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they're made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meeting Act can be found in a white binder in this room. And we have no changes to the consent agenda, so I'll get started with those consent cases. Agenda item number 5, case C3-21-324, C10-21-325, C12-21-326. Applicant Drew Snyder, Woodsonia Acquisitions, LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of The Haven, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4, along with the request for a variance to the present development zone. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay districts. This was laid over from our December 2021 meeting. Location, southwest of 216th and Fort. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 6, case C10-22-46, C12-22-48, applicant 192 Honeysuckle LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Lincoln Station, a minor plat inside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R6. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay districts. This was laid over from our February meeting. Location, northwest of 192nd Street and Honeysuckle Drive. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 7, case C11-22-47. Applicant 192 Honeysuckle LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a plan unit development overlay district. This also was laid over from our February meeting. Location northwest of 192nd Street and Honeysuckle Drive. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 9, case C3-22-56, applicant, Planning Department, on behalf of the City of Omaha. It is on for layover. Request approval of amendment to the future land use element of the city's master plan to reclassify the intersection of 144th and F from neighborhood 30-acre mixed-use area to community 60-acre mixed-use area. Location 144th and F Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 13, case C12-22-61, applicant John Alexander. It is on for layover. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Sycamore Farms, a minor plat outside city limits with a waiver to section 5399 sidewalks. Location northeast of River Road Drive and Dodge Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 14, case C12-22-62, applicant Art Neppel, ABN Building LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Foxley Industrial Park Replat 5, a minor plat inside city limits. Location 4910 F Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 15, case C10-22-63, applicant Teresa Botos. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R2 to R5. Location 8909 Burt Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. What, we got one?
Just so I
Okay.
understand, removal would put it back on the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
If you want to testify, then you have to remove it.
Yes, sir, we'd like that.
Okay, will do. That was 15. Okay. All right, agenda item number 16, case C10-22-64, applicant Lawrence Wilson. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GI to R5, location 1808 Sailor Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 17, case C10-22-65, applicant Mariel Silva. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GI and HI to GI, location 2316 Madison Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 19, case C10-22-67, C10-96-261, applicant AVG Partners 1 LLC. It is on for layover. Request rezoning from LI to MU with approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development plan for Alltech Business Park. Property is located within the Flood Fringe Overlay District. Location 4007 South 145th Plaza. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 20, case C10-22-68, applicant Woodhouse Auto Family. It is on for approval. Request approval of the major commercial corridor overlay district. Property is located within the Flood Fringe Overlay District. Location 6303 L Street. 6603 L Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Moving on, agenda item number 21, case C8-22-69, applicant Chiquita Crawford. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow small group living, non-disabled, in the R4 35 district. Location 3316 North 45th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, it will be removed.
I'm sorry, for removal, for clarification, that's to have it approved,
No,
or just to remove completely?
if it stays on the consent, it's on for approval,
Okay.
and no more, there won't be a vote, won't be any testimony about it. If you want to testify, then you're going to have to take it off. Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll leave it on. Agenda item number 22, case C8-22-70, applicant John Faulkner. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow small group living disabled in the R7 district and within 600 feet of another group living facility. Location 3423 Cumming. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 23, case C8-22-71, applicant American Tower Delaware Corporation. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow a broadcast tower in the DR district with a waiver to section 55-108 height to allow a 270-foot tall tower. Location 11805 Military Road. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 24, case C8-22-72, applicant John Alexander. It is on for layover. Request approval of a special use permit to allow a campground in the DR district. Property is located within the floodway overlay district. Location northeast of River Road Drive and Dodge Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, so we'll take a motion for those items on consent for approval.
Motion to approve agenda items number 5, 6, 7, 14, 16, 17, 20, 21, 22, and 23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
We'll now take a motion for the consent items that were on for layover.
Motion to lay over cases 9, 13, 19, and 24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, will you please record the vote?
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, those cases that were left on the consent, no vote, no further testimony will be taken today. Those are done, and you are, if you're here for one of those cases, you're free to leave or you're free to stay. It's up to you. And thank you for coming down today. The first 4 cases are administrative only. There will be no opportunity for a public hearing. We'll get started with agenda item number 1, case C10-21-296, C12-21-297, applicant HRC Arcadia Ridge LLC. Request final plat approval of Arcadia Ridge, lots 1 through 93, outlots A and B, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4, location northwest of Kansas and Laurel Avenues. And Mike, you're up.
Yeah, the preliminary plat for Arcadia Ridge with the rezoning and approval of a present development zone boundary variance was recommended for approval by the planning board on November 3rd, 2021, and subsequently approved by the city council at the December 21 and January 11th meetings, respectively. This final plat is in for review for the first phase of the development, 93 lots and 2 outlots. It is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. It should be noted that this phase does exclude 16 lots on the west side of the development that are served by a sanitary sewer flowing to the west, which will be in a future phase, which is acceptable. One of the conditions that will be required to be addressed prior to forwarding the request to City Council will be the submittal and addressing of the preliminary approval of the stormwater, post-construction stormwater management plan from Public Works. And also a noxious weed plan letter will have to be submitted. Conditionally, everything, the subdivision and the rezoning is consistent with and carries out the goals of the master plan. We recommend approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4 and approval of the final plat subject to the 3 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
Okay, any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 3 items listed in the department's recommendation report.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Solongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin. Yes. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 2, case C10-22-13, C12-22-14, applicant Celebrity Homes Omaha, request final plat approval of Stratford West, lots 1 through 98, outlots A and B, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG and DR to R4. Location, southwest of 171st Street and Military Road. Mike.
This first phase final plat for Stratford West consists of 98 lots and 2 outlots. The preliminary plat for the overall development was recently approved yesterday, actually, by the City Council for the development. That allows the board then to act on this final plat. This particular request is the southern portion of the development. One of the big issues that will need to be addressed at recording of the plat time would be the issue of dedicating right-of-way for Rachel Snowden Parkway that's on the south end of the development. Also, they'll have to address the issue of the post-construction stormwater management plan prior to going to City Council. But other than that, conditionally, the request for this first phase complies with all the objectives of the master plan and the municipal code. The department recommends approval of rezoning from AG and DR to R4, approval of the final plat for lots 1 through 98 and outlots A and B, subject to addressing the 2 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to City Council.
Comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Go ahead.
Motion to approve. Read the wrong thing. A motion to approve of the rezoning from AG and DR to R4, approval of final plat for lots 1 through 98 and outlots A and B, subject to addressing the final prior to forwarding to this request to City Council.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Solongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 3, case C10-22-5, C12-22-7, applicant Apogee Professional Services, request final plat approval of Capriana, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from AG to R5 and R6. Location, west of 210th and Emmett Streets. Mike.
This request for the for final plat is before you. The preliminary plat with the rezoning and a PUD was recommended approval at the January 5th meeting of the board, and the preliminary plat was then subsequently approved by the City Council at the February 5th, 2022 meeting. The PUD will now accompany the final plat if approved by the board when it goes to City Council. This request will create 12 lots and 4 outlots. It is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. Everything appears to be addressed as part of the request. We recommend approval of the rezoning from AG to R5 and R6 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the 2 items listed in the recommendation report prior to forwarding the request to City Council.
Okay, comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from AG to R5 and R6 and approval of the final plat subject to addressing the two items in the staff report prior to forwarding the request to the city council for final action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 4, case C10-21-302, C12-21-303. Applicant Michael Malley, Sky Ridge Villas LLC, request final plat approval of Sky Ridge Villas, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from DR to DR and R5. Location 1999 Veterans Drive. Mike.
The preliminary plat for this project was approved by the city council back on June 29th of 2021 with 6 conditions at that time. The request now is before you for the final plat, rezoning from DR to DR and R5. It's 81 single-family residential lots and 4 outlots for open space and drainage purposes. The request is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. Therefore, the department recommends approval of the rezoning from DR to DR and R5 and approval of the final plat for Sky Ridge Villas, subject to the 2 conditions prior to forwarding this request to City Council.
Any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
A motion for approval of the rezoning from DR to DR and R5 and approval of the final plat of Sky Ridge Villas, subject to the 2 conditions in the recommendation report prior to forwarding to city council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 8, case C3-22-55. Applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the 2022 Action Plan. Location, City of Omaha and the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. And is Pat, are you presenting?
Pat Evans with the City Planning Department. Yes, we'd like approval of the 2022 Annual Action Plan. This plan is developed from a community outreach during the previous year. The applications that we received through the RFP processes was received in 2022. Those RFPs were reviewed by staff and ranked. They were then submitted to our administration, further then to the mayor and to council members for their review and comment. Upon that, we did have a public hearing here, January 27th. We had a 30-day comment period, which ended February 27th. That resulted in several comments that are being considered. We have here the plan that we want to put forth to council and then onto HUD for approval that contains the budget that shows the allocations to the various agencies and programs that had applied through the RFP process. This is for the Community Development Block Grant Funds, CDBG, and the Home Investment Partnership Funds, the Home Funds, and the ESG, or Emergency Shelter Grants. I'm here for any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Certainly.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Additional comments or questions from the board? Oh, I thought, okay. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Nope, just recommend approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 10, case C3-16-233. Applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of an amendment to the HDR Exarban Zone 6 TIF redevelopment project plan. Location, northeast of 67th and Francis Street. And Bridget, you're up.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. The amendment for the HDR Exarban Village Zone 6 is before you. The request is to increase the TIF by a little over $1.4 million to make additional major public infrastructure improvements beyond what is already there. I'll take you back just a little bit to the original plan that was approved around 2016 by the TIF Committee, Planning Board, and City Council. And it includes the shaded area that you see here. To give you some bearings, here's Shirley Street, 67th Street, and then 64th Street, and then this is West Center Road. This is just another view of that same spot, looking at the entire Exarban Village redevelopment plan area. What you see highlighted in red or outlined in red is the Exarban Zone 6. And again, outlined in red, Exarban Zone 6. This happens to represent the parking structure and the headquarters for HDR and some of the inner rail improvements. And then, of course, just some rendering so you can see this is the building. This is the headquarters again, starting where the inner rail portions are, the garage structure. All of that was a part of the original TIF. Oops. So the original TIF approved about a little over $15 million, and it was based on a total project valuation that was a little over $73 million. When the committee approved the TIF at that time, there was a little over $1.2 million that was of TIF that was still left and available. However, there were not enough TIF eligible items identified at that time, so only the over $15 million was approved. This amendment that was brought to us is an opportunity to make additional public improvements that I believe are in your packet on a site plan, and a majority of them are highlighted here in yellow, and then some of them are also along the inner rail. And I'll just
Bridget, can you stop for just a second?
There it goes. There it goes.
Oh, there you got it. All right, thanks, Ronald.
Oh.
It was a little blurry and
sorry.
Ronald got it, so.
Okay. So in your packet, some of those major public improvements that are talked about or discussed are a public pop-up park, a public dog park, pickleball courts, resurfacing and enhancements of the public area with the existing Airstream trailer and entertainment area, a canopy for the public outdoor entertainment, greenhouse, volleyball courts, and other public amenities. So those are some of those public amenities that are going to be added. Now, I know a question was there is already a dog park there and some other things that are already there. Those are more of the temporary form of what is expected to be. So this site plan, you can't really see in this one, but you can see that here is the inner rail. Here's where they're proposing a sand volleyball court area, an improved dog park, and other improvements. And then here is the aerial visual rendering of what this will look like, the dog park area. And this is to the north of the HDR headquarters and to the north of the garage. And then this is just a close-up view of looking into where that dog park area would be. So again, this request is for the additional public improvements that would be made. And the rationale that was accepted by the TIF committee is that, first of all, these are public improvements, and TIF is always used for public improvements. Also, the fact that there was already an additional $1.2 million based on the original value that the TIF committee viewed back in 2016. So an additional $1.2 million kind of left on the table. It was acceptable to go ahead and allow $1.2 million of their $1.4 million requested to go ahead and be approved to make these public improvements. So with that, I would ask for your approval, and I know Jay Noddle is here to clarify anything that was not clear and maybe give a little further explanation.
Thank you, Bridget. Any other proponents wishing to speak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, city staff. I'm Jay Noddle with Noddle Companies, 2285 South 67th in Exarban Village. This is really exciting for Exarban Village. I'm going to give you a little bit of history. When we started off with the planning for what we call Zone 6, which is the full block, we weren't quite sure how things would work. And so as we worked through our negotiations for the lease with HDR, one of the things we thought would be good to include is a temporary park. And so we sold off a couple parcels of land and started our way through the development of the temporary park. Well, as luck would have it, and particularly the things that we've learned through the pandemic, not only did it work, the park isn't big enough, the amenities aren't extensive enough, and we have since bought back, we have repurchased the land that we sold in the block. So we own the whole block and all the buildings in the block. What we're going to do now is expand the dog park, configure it and outfit it in more of a permanent fashion. We're planning on building a cover over the inner rail. That's the area between the food hall and the HDR headquarters building. Install restrooms around the dog park. They'll be seasonal, but they'll be permanent. Outdoor cooking facilities around that area, as well as another cover over much of the seating area in that dog park, or in the pop-up park. So the park is becoming permanent. It's expensive, high demand. This will be the third time we've expanded the dog park itself. And so our request is that you allow us to use the capacity that was in the original package. We didn't take it back then, in part because we didn't have enough TIF eligible expenses to use it all, but we could have. And we wanted to wait to make sure that we understood what the utilization was going to be. So that's where we are now, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope for your approval here today.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
So Jay, just a question or two for you. So from the original plan, I mean, some of these things are already existing, as you said.
A few of them are, yes.
Two of them are existing. So are any of the funds, the TIF funds that were approved back in, when it was, 2016 or whenever it was, are any of those funds repeated in the request for these TIF funds?
No.
None?
No.
Okay.
The improvements in this area, in the outdoor areas, were all paid for privately. What you see there has been paid for privately.
Privately. Okay, thanks.
Is this called Noddle Park?
Sonny's. And that's not me.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Additional comments, questions? Patrick, did you get everything answered? Okay. Any additional comments or questions from the board?
We recommend approval of the additional $1,236,586 in TIF.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I motion for approval of additional $1,236,586 in TIF.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 11, case C3-22-59. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request approval of the Urban Core Housing and Mobility Redevelopment Project Plan. Location, an area generally bound by Cummings Street to the north, Woolworth Avenue to the south, the Missouri River to the east, and 50th Avenue to the west. Mr. Anderson, you're up.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Troy Anderson, Deputy Chief of Staff, City of Omaha Mayor's Office. I'm here today to present the Urban Core Housing and Mobility Redevelopment Plan. So I'll begin with a little bit of an introduction to kind of set the stage. This information is not in the redevelopment plan, but it does help understand kind of how we've arrived at where we are today and why we're focused on redevelopment of the urban core. So the following is an excerpt from the City of Omaha's master plan. It comes out of the concept element, specifically on page 20, the urban form subsection. And I'm just going to read it. The 1989 Ross Boyle Economic Development Study prepared for the City of Omaha and the Omaha Chamber of Commerce noted that Omaha needed to develop a clear and positive national and regional image. It went on to say that without this image, Omaha could be hindered in its business recruitment efforts. At the same time, the general growth of the city had begun to lessen the historical focus on downtown as the city's image center, and created the possibility that without action, Omaha could develop the image of any town USA. So the concept was that Omaha's downtown needed to be a clear and positive image center for the city. The types of activities necessary to create, enhance, and maintain that image will be identified and located in downtown. That was back in 1989. So as you can see, there's been identification and a want and a desire and a lot of emphasis over the last several decades to try and create the urban core as the center and the image. May hear the comment, the postcard of the city of Omaha. Unfortunately, though, since 1963, downtown has lost 21,000 jobs. Market studies suggest that we can bring those jobs back. However, the jobs and the housing cannot fit without higher density development and fundamental changes in parking mobility. That's a common theme that you'll see throughout this redevelopment plan. So let's take a look at the redevelopment plan area. So the redevelopment plan area is approximately 50 city blocks, bounded by approximately 50th Street on the west, Cumming Street on the north, Missouri River on the east, and Woolworth Street on the south. This is figure 1 included in the redevelopment plan. Also in the section regarding the redevelopment plan area, there are a number of other redevelopment plan areas within these boundaries. So how do they supersede each other, et cetera? Again, I'm going to read right from the redevelopment plan just for clarity. Several areas and properties within the redevelopment plan area are subject to existing redevelopment plans. This plan supersedes previous planning efforts except where such plans authorize the division of ad valorem taxes. Effective development plans that authorize the division of ad valorem taxes shall remain in effect, and if there is conflict between those plans and this plan, those plans shall control. In other words, we just want to make sure that we're not impacting any previous redevelopment projects and any investments that those developments may be carrying through TIF notes or otherwise. Okay. The next section of the redevelopment plan are the existing conditions section. I won't go through a whole lot of that, but I will highlight a few areas. Number 1, under land use, as you can see in figure 2, there is a lot of surface parking. Specifically, at peak occupancy, there are often still around 17,000 vacant parking stalls in the redevelopment plan area. These parking demands are development barriers and prevent redevelopment of land within the urban core, which is vital to obtaining those jobs and residents that we are all hoping to try to bring back to the urban core. Also within the land use subsection, as you can see, the redevelopment plan area lacks affordable and workforce housing. We'll get to that in just a second. So what are we trying to accomplish? The next subsection or the next section is the redevelopment plan goals. In the redevelopment plan goals, you'll hear a term called 30-30-30, right? That's 30,000 residents and 30,000 new jobs, 30,000 new residents, 30,000 new jobs in 30 years. That's the plan, 30-30-30, right? However, as previously suggested, the urban core cannot physically accommodate the jobs, the affordable housing, and the other development without reducing parking ratios and increasing the height and density of new development. So how do we do that? The next section, modern streetcar and mobility infrastructure, is one of the two aspects of the redevelopment plan that's addressed. So first of all, Omaha has a history of connection to streetcars. In the 2017 Omaha Historic Streetcar System, there was an intensive land survey that was done. This is available online through the city's website. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, there's some really exciting and some really interesting history around streetcars in and around Omaha. The modern streetcar, however, would function as a free circulator and allows for a district parking model of disparate but effectively linked parking assets. And in essence, it's a park once solution. So I kind of use the analogy as if maybe I'm visiting downtown, or if I live downtown, if I wanted to go see the doctor at UNMC and then maybe go grab lunch in the old market, do some shopping, maybe go grab dinner in Blackstone, maybe go catch a Creighton game of CHI at the end of the day, I'd have to get in my car, move, park 4 different times. That's four different parking stalls. And as you can see in figure 2, that's the environment that we've created in the urban core. It's not conducive to an additional 30,000 jobs, additional 30,000 residents in the next 30 years. So here comes along the introduction of a transit system. It's a park once solution, right? So now in the new model, rather than parking 4 different times, I can park once anywhere along the transit route, and I can frequent all of those amenities and all of those businesses, all of those locations without ever having to get back in the vehicle. The other aspect of the redevelopment plan, section 6, is the development and implementation of affordable and workforce housing. Knowing and understanding that there's a lack of that in the urban core, our goal is to implement an affordable and workforce housing strategy within the redevelopment plan area, with a goal resulting in the construction of approximately 1,000 new units of affordable and workforce housing within the redevelopment plan area in the next 20 years. So how do we accomplish all of this? The last section in the redevelopment plan, section 7, deals with the financing of redevelopment projects. Primarily, the city will utilize TIF, or tax increment financing. The redevelopment plan authorizes TIF in the amount of at least $356 million to finance the redevelopment projects. In adopting the redevelopment plan, the city of Omaha also forms the Housing and Mobility TIF District. This is figure 6 in the redevelopment plan. This is the TIF district. As you can see, the boundaries of this district are 3 blocks on either side of the transit line, the streetcar line. Through our research, we found that it's within this quarter mile, within these 3 blocks on either side of the transit line, that the most benefit comes from introduction of a transit system, right? So these are the property owners, these are the businesses, these are the folks who tend to benefit the greatest from introduction and implementation of a transit system. This is also where we see valuation increase almost immediately from the announcement of the streetcar. In some communities, we've seen the rise in valuation upwards of 20-30% within 3 blocks of either side of the transit line. The plan then goes on to authorize the division of taxes on properties within the district. This is what we're calling the district. So not to be confused with the redevelopment plan area, just those properties within 3 blocks of the streetcar line. The plan then goes on to establish what we're calling the area of influence. So we've also found that not only within 3 blocks or quarter mile of each side of the streetcar line, but also in blocks 4 to 6, there is a lift in valuation just as a result of announcement and then ultimate construction of a streetcar. So by introducing this additional influence area in blocks 4 to 6, we also provide supporting revenues and opportunities to create affordable housing and workforce housing, not only within the district, not only within the influence area, but then also within the whole redevelopment plan area. The last subsection deals with the eligible expenses attributed to redevelopment projects that are already existing. Specifically, because of the introduction of extremely blighted and substandard area designation, we can divide those taxes from, for now, 20 years rather than the 15 traditionally. And so we're able to capture the last couple of years to help offset the costs associated with investing in the transit system as well as affordable housing and workforce housing. Excuse me. So with that being said, that concludes my presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Troy.
Please, thank you. Okay.
Just for the benefit of everyone else that in the room, in the pre-meeting, you talked a little bit, this is specifically pertaining to the transportation and the mobility part of the study. You talked a little bit about the phases for kind of the next iteration of the plan to include connectivity to North and South Omaha. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep, let me pull up the route here. Give me just a second. So the first phase of, and the reason why we say the first phase is we have every reason to believe that this is going to launch additional phases, right, and be able to connect the city as a whole through multimodal transit opportunities. So the first phase is a 3-mile route. The one terminus is on 10th Street in front of the CHI Health Center. Travels north and south along 10th Street, and then east and west along Farnham and Harney, with the western terminus at about 42nd Street. That's the initial phase. So there has been numerous public forums, study, analysis. There was an alternatives analysis done years ago. All along, there's been this idea of, well, you know, maybe we pursue federal funding for this first phase. What we've come to realize excuse me, is that if we can pay for this locally and not use federal highway administration, FTA funds or otherwise, not only one, does it reduce the cost, but number two, it also reduces the time that it takes to build it. In the meantime, over the next couple of years, as we are in the process of constructing it, we can now immediately begin to look to those FTA and federal funds for future phases because of the time that it takes to apply for those, do the studies, do the analysis. So some of the things that we've already identified is there could possibly be a north route up to the airport. Makes sense for a number of reasons around tourism and economic development, et cetera. The other would be an extension south to the zoo for all the same reasons. Another alternative phase could be a north-south along the 30th Street corridor. The reason why we identified the 30th Street corridor is because right now there's a study being taken to extend the orbit line using the 24th Street corridor, right? So the first sub-phase was orbit, right? And that moved folks along the Dodge Street corridor. The next phase is the streetcar, right? But if we can implement the North 24th Street corridor through orbit, we can now connect North and South Omaha talent to the urban core, to the jobs, to the healthcare, to the park system, and all the amenities that the urban core offer. The next phase thereafter would be most likely the connection, probably a 30th Street corridor where a streetcar line would then also connect those same. Beyond that, you're probably talking about possibly a western route. Early on, there was a study that suggested using Saddle Creek to Center might be a future corridor for a streetcar expansion that would take it west. At the end of the day, we got to start somewhere. This seemed, in all of the analysis and on all the public feedback, to be the most logical, reasonable first step. And then as we implement that, we can now begin to start looking at other future phases, particularly connecting that to the north and south.
Thanks, Troy. Question. One sign that this is going to work is going to be the effect on car ridership and ownership. Can you address how this plan focuses on car ownership in the redevelopment area itself?
Yeah, so in the redevelopment plan, it alludes to the idea that with this park once solution, right, especially if I'm a resident in the urban core, I may get to the point where I don't even need an automobile anymore, right? If I can walk from my home to the transit line, and I can take that transit to healthcare, and I can take that transit to commerce and to my job and to entertainment and food and everything. I may not even necessarily need a car anymore. The other scenario is, maybe I'm a family within the area. Yeah, maybe I have 3 cars. Maybe I don't need 3 cars anymore. Maybe I just need 2, or I had 2 cars. Maybe now I only need 1. So reducing the overall demand of vehicles within the district, not only by residents, could then translate to, it's suggested that those cost savings could translate to $400 to $700 a month in somewhat of disposable income that could then be put back towards housing or other disposable income within a family. The other aspect of that question is those folks coming into downtown, right? So rather than having that same vehicle in my previous illustration, parking, but then getting back on the roads and driving to another parking stall, and then getting back on the road and driving to another park. Now we've eliminated those inter-trip type of traffic congestions on our local streets as well. Getting to the one park solution and getting folks on a transit system also cuts down on traffic congestion within our existing street systems. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Jay, were you coming up?
Jay Noddle, 2285 South 67th Street. I just want to say this effort has been very, very extensive, and there have been a tremendous number of folks involved in this, including myself. This really dates back to May of 2018 in this last round of thinking about the core of the city and of the region. And I think one of the most important things to realize here is that we've had a chance to look carefully at a lot of communities around the country to understand what worked, what didn't work, how did they do it, why did they do it. And I think everyone that's been involved in this effort is very comfortable that we have a really good idea what's going to happen, what kind of development will come along, how will it happen, who may be involved in it. This opens up our community to a much bigger stage, quite honestly. It puts Omaha and Council Bluffs, the region, in a position to truly be a first choice city for talent, which is so vitally important, for employers, and then all the other things that come along with it. And we know from the homework we've done that housing and transportation and jobs are the 3 legs to the stool, and they've got to have all 3 of them to accomplish the kinds of things that this plan intends to accomplish. So I just encourage you to approve this and move it on so that we can begin more work on this very important infrastructure piece, and so that the economic development and job growth, talent retention, talent attraction can take center stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Please give your name and address.
Hi, my name is Sarah Nelson. My address is 4806 Underwood Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Dundee Memorial Park Association. And I hate that you only have proponents and opponents. I want like some middle ground. I really like that. So the Dundee Memorial Park Association Board just heard about this plan a few days ago. I think that the memo came out on like February 15th. And so we just feel like we would really love more time to digest this, to learn more about this, to ask more questions. Since there is such a huge amount budgeted for TIF, $356 million, we really think that that should include some public engagement and the public to be able to ask some questions and get some answers. Because overall, we are very much, this plan looks great. Like, I don't want to at all think or try to give the impression that the Dundee Memorial Park Association is opposed to this plan. We just have a lot of questions. For one of the things that we've been talking about is we feel like we're being tiffed to death. And especially $356 million in TIF. And if we're going to keep the district affordable, how do we keep it affordable without raising real estate taxes to pay back the TIF? We have a lot of questions about that. So that was one of the questions. And then the streetcar sounds great, love it. But it runs along the same line as Orbit. And so we'd really just love some more clarity as to, I'm sure a little alarm went off in my head when I heard from our two previous speakers ago that we want to bypass the studies that the federal funding would give us. That kind of worries me a little. So, but I'm sure there are experts in the community that have plenty of information they could give to us to settle us a little bit and to really help us understand why that route was chosen for the streetcar. So I think that's all I have to say.
It's all right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other opponents?
My name is Tom Prohaska, 5647 Briggs Street. I'm not sure I'd qualify myself or categorize myself as an opponent, but I think there's a lot of unanswered questions here, as a previous speaker mentioned. The fact that this entire area is outlined in, I think, Mr. Alexander, all that must be declared extremely blighted. Will that have any impact on people that have businesses and homes in that area as far as financing their properties if it's not going to be a TIF request? I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not a lender, but I think that's something that needs to be discussed. The second question I have is in regard to the $350-some million TIF money. I can envision that being approved today or whenever, but 2 years from now, I can also envision coming back saying, well, we had this great idea and it took $200 million. And since it doesn't appear that anyone negotiates TIF money, every developer comes in with their proposal that says, this is what we need to make the deal work, because that's what our bankers tell us to look for. This board and the council approve whatever they ask for. It doesn't appear there's any negotiation. Once the big chunk of that money is spent, isn't someone going to come back in here in 2 or 3 years and say, well, we need another couple $100 million in TIF money to make this all work? Now, I know the city and the county are awash with federal TIF or federal COVID money right now, but I don't think the school district is awash with money right now, and some of the other taxing authorities. And I hope this has all been thought through, because I have a hunch why the deal, or why the route is chosen that way, because if I'm not mistaken, the Med Center is on that route, and if I'm not mistaken, Midtown Crossing is on that route, and there's other places. So I have a hunch it's a done deal, but I hope all of these things have been thoroughly looked into because of disparate impact down the road. Thank you.
Okay. Any other opponents wishing to speak? Did you have a question, Sydney?
About the TIF application process and the TIF committee process?
We'll bring them up as soon as the opponents are done, Sydney. Okay. Any other opponents? No? Okay. Close the public hearing. Troy, did you want to come up and address some, and Sydney wanted you to talk about the TIF?
Yeah, there was a couple of comments in there. I'll get to the TIF question here in just a minute. Let me answer maybe some of the simpler ones. With regards to the gentleman's comments about blighted and substandard, these properties, every property within the redevelopment plan area is already located within a community redevelopment area. These areas have already been declared blighted and substandard in previous efforts. So everything in the redevelopment plan area is already a community redevelopment. It has already been designated. This process does not make that declaration. Those declarations have already been made. This just builds on top of those processes and those decisions that have already been made. Okay, so the next one, the lady made a comment about bypassing the federal studies. Actually, when we explored this particular route, and over the last several years, if we've gone down the course of could this be the route, should this be the route, could we use federal dollars, should we use federal dollars, we had to follow the federal process, right? There was an alternative. I mentioned the alternatives, and now that's a federal requirement, right? So we haven't bypassed any processes per se, other than actually asking for any money. We've followed the federal process thus far, for the other reason too of, as we pursue federal dollars, or the opportunity to pursue federal dollars for future phases, we don't want to compromise our ability to receive those dollars by not having gone through our due diligence during this first phase. So we've been very cognizant of the federal process. We have folks who are advising us on that process and have helped guide that along the way. So we haven't bypassed anything just yet, other than the fact of just how you pay for it. Okay, so let me get to the TIF for just a second. Part of that's probably just an understanding of how TIF works, right? And understand that TIF only works if there is development, right? We anticipate that over the next 15, 20 years, there is $3 billion worth of development that is primed to come up out of the ground, particularly within the 3 blocks of either side of the route. $3 billion worth of development. It's that $3 billion of development that pays for the public infrastructure. If you don't build the public infrastructure, that $3 billion worth of development doesn't happen. And it comes back to the parking, right? Because if you wanted to build $3 billion worth of development, what comes along with that? Parking. You got to park it, right? I mean, that's the model that we've been going through for the last several decades, and we know it doesn't work. We can't park ourselves out of new jobs, and you'll hear that in probably the next item on the agenda, right? You just can't park your way out of it, right? We've gotten to a point where it's just not a solution anymore, right? So, and all of this parking then can be freed up for housing, for jobs, for other amenities, commerce, retail, restaurants. So the other aspect of TIF is it's not a tax increase, right? There's 2 sides of property taxes. There's the valuation that comes from the county assessor. That's the valuation, right? And then there's your levies, all the taxing jurisdictions, the schools, the county, the city, all your levies against that valuation. So will valuations go up? Valuations go up every year, right? Within 3 blocks of the streetcar line, that's that 10, 20, 30% valuation increase, because those properties within 3 blocks of the streetcar line tend to benefit the greatest. They're within walking distance. The quarter mile comes from kind of that idea of how far is somebody willing to walk to a transit station, so on and so forth. There's a lot of research around that. So we're not increasing taxes, right? Without tax increment financing, that's a result of development. Without any development, again, we're not getting the jobs, we're not getting the residents. And that's why I mentioned, and I kind of framed the whole conversation around that master plan comment from back in 1989. Omaha may become Anytown USA, right? We're trying to prevent Anytown USA. Are there some neighborhoods around the periphery? Yeah, absolutely. Will their valuations go up as part of this? Possibly, right? Valuations are going up every year anyway. Nobody's increasing the levies, but yes, valuations, and we hope valuations go up. We understand that there's some folks on fixed incomes. That's why we're also thinking about how the district and the influence area, how can we look at exceptions associated 1 and 2 family owner occupied residences, some of those kind of things. But at the end of the day, this is a transit and mobility solution to try to present opportunities for no longer having to have 17,000 vacant stalls sit vacant day after day after day, but how do we get 30, 30, 30?
Hey, Troy, because TIF is so confusing for people, I think a lot of times they think that we have a bucket of money that we're giving to developers, or we're taking it away from property taxes, or we're taking it away from the school system. Can you explain a little bit more about that, about how, that it won't impact the schools, or, we're not taxing individual homeowners for this TIF project?
Correct. So historically, what you've seen in TIF applications is a very site-specific TIF application, right? Within that TIF application, the existing development has a value of X, right? And that existing property owner on that property pays property taxes. When that property owner comes in, or that developer comes in and adds a project, adds value to their property, it's their taxes that are coming back to them to pay for the public infrastructure improvements that they paid for, right? So the adjoining property owner, who's not within that TIF, their taxes go to all the other taxing jurisdictions, just like it was before the project. So there's no new money, right? The TIF revenue comes from the taxes that are paid from the properties that are being developed, and from the valuation increase from the properties that are being paid. So if I'm an adjoining property owner, now granted, my valuation may go up because there's a development associated with, but my taxes are not going to pay for those public infrastructure improvements. It's only those properties within.
Not going to the project.
Correct, correct.
And not being pulled away from schools or anything else. It's that project in itself that you have the TIF for.
It's the public infrastructure improvements that are associated with the project. Again, it's not the project, right? The Nebraska legislature lays out through the community development law what the eligible expenses are, and they are public improvements. So it's an individual developer property who's increasing valuation on, and it's because of the taxes that they're paying and the taxes that they've generated as an increase in valuation that's going to pay back for the public, really for the benefit of everybody involved. It's not going back into, we're not taking money from a taxpayer out in West Omaha and paying a builder. It just doesn't work like that. Right.
But I think there's some clarification needs to be made that the TIF eligible projects, the real estate taxes on that are going to pay back the TIF fund,
That's
right?
correct.
They don't go to the school districts, so the school districts don't realize that revenue from that particular project.
Until after the TIF note is paid off.
It's paid off 15
Right.
years down the road, right, typically.
And I'll add to that they also wouldn't realize an increase in valuation because TIF is above 4, right? If TIF isn't approved, then the project doesn't happen. There's no increase in valuation, so there's no additional revenue anyway.
Right. So a couple other questions for you then while you're up here, Troy, if I can. So I think you addressed the federal dollar issue, but I think it's important to know that even though you followed the federal guidelines, which is great, to try and get federal dollars would probably really delay the project, right? We've seen that happen many, many, many times. So if we can avoid that and keep this on schedule, I think that's an important factor in all of this, if we can.
Correct,
avoid
correct. It's the time value money, right? I mean, a project that takes you 4 years, paid locally, costs X, right, 306 million. If we had to go through the federal route and it took us 6 years or 7 years, you've now tacked on arguably $30 to $50 million just in kind of that time value money, yes.
And if I might just finish up my thoughts here if I can, otherwise I'll lose them. So we talked about this a little bit in the pre-meeting as well. So I think it's important too, when we talk about this development zone here, this new development zone, what we're hoping it will happen is that these are going to be new economic development projects. And that we're not taking developments that are maybe in North Omaha or South Omaha, West Omaha, and go into this area to take advantage of some of the incentives that exist. We're hoping that we get new economic development and new jobs created from this, and not just robbing one section of the city for this benefit.
Correct, correct. We have a lot of really special, really exciting pockets of, I think about what's going on at Crossroads, right? I think about what's going on at Heartwood Preserve. I think about, you heard about what's going on in Exarban, right? A lot of that is based on, a corporate structure, right? Like, what are their employees? What are their tenants? What are they looking for? The urban core is really designed around employers who are looking for an opportunity to locate in the urban core or to grow their business in the urban core. You'll hear in just a little bit about the reason why you invest in the urban core is talent attraction, right? You think about, I'm going to build this great big huge tower, 4,000 employees, that next generation of talent, maybe they don't want to own a car, right? Maybe they want to ride the cool street car and go to work and then go down and watch the game, stuff like that. It's entirely a conversation about demographics and what type of talent that you're trying to attract. If I'm a business owner and my average employee is a 45-year-old with a family, hey, we have plenty of opportunities in West Omaha for those kind of folks. And that's really what makes Omaha exciting, is we have a little bit of everything for everybody.
Yeah, and this is something too that will help recruit not only talent but businesses here, which come hand in hand, right? Businesses here. This is something in today's world that modern urban cities have in place or want in place, and this helps to attract new business. And I'm sure you're working with the city's working their economic development arm with the Chamber of Commerce as well, just for that purpose.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the other thing we need to address, the gentleman referred to how the developers come to us with a number. And, I think if you could expound on the specifics that are required by the state for this to be allowable, TIFable costs, so that it's not just some arbitrary number that the developer wants to get.
Correct. So number one, I'll tip my cap to our planning staff, Bridget, Dawn, who do an incredible job, right? So they spend countless hours going through those eligible expenses that I referenced, right? The developer has to come forward, or the building or the property owner has to come forward. Here are all my expenses, and they vet those against previous projects. Okay, is that truly an eligible expense? And through the process of checks and balances, on one hand, we have a pretty good idea of what those eligible expense costs are, number one. And number two is that the valuation, the increase in valuation, has to support the payback of that TIF note within that 15-year term. Again, I tip my cap to the folk in our law department. I know Jen Taylor does a lot of work in this area. And so they go through and they analyze, okay, the max amount of TIF that the project can support based on the increased valuation that the project's going to introduce. They know that generally there's a rule of thumb we kind of carry around here is about 15%, right? We know that about 15% of a project can probably be carried through the future valuation and the TIF eligible expenses. So we have Again, we've been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years. We have a pretty good model in place to make sure that the checks and balances are in place, that it's not just developer coming with the numbers. We have a process to identify what are those eligible expenses. All that information is in the packet. What are they paying for this? What are they paying for that? And knowing what the valuation will support. Yep.
Thank you, Troy. Any other additional comments or questions from the board? Mike, did you want to add anything?
Nope, just recommend approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Moore,
Yes.
Yes.
Morris, Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin. Yes. Mr. Chair.
Just a quick statement before I make my vote. I think this is going to be a good project. I thank you, Troy, for your presentation. Kevin Anderson, Jennifer Taylor, Dave Fanslau, Mike Carter, answering all of our questions upstairs. There's a lot of information here. I wish, like Jay Noddle was talking, that this board had been maybe included along this procedure, this route, that we would have had more time to look at this. Like I said, you've done a great job of answering our questions, but I'm not even certain all the questions that I might have. I just got a lot of this information today. So for that reason, and my vote's not going to change anything, but for that reason, I'm voting no today on the project, only because I wished I had more time to study this and know all the questions I might have coming up down the road. So in the future, I hope we can be included in large projects like this and get more time to look at everything.
Greg, in that same kind of track, where can the public get more information so that from now until, the next phase and the next phase, they can be informed?
Troy Anderson, Mayor's Office, to maybe answer that question.
Troy, just a second. Can we move forward with the question while we have a vote, Jennifer? Mine was the final vote.
Yeah, yours is the final. Approved 6-1.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Troy.
Okay. I would reference the City of Omaha's website. On the landing page of the city, there's a great big huge section, total mobility system plan. As the information comes available and as the information we can share it, that information will be made available to the public. I mean, I feel kind of silly carrying this around, right? But I mean, that's a little bit of the research that's behind what you're receiving in the redevelopment plan is the Reader's Digest, right? Is the executive summary. This is 5-10 years in the making, right? So there's been involvement from the community all along the way. But as we move forward of what's the next bit of information, check out the city's website. On the landing page, there's a total mobility. You'll see it. Great big huge box. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Moving on, agenda item number 12, case C3-22-60. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the project Beacon TIF redevelopment project plan. Location 215 South 15th Street. And Kevin, you're presenting?
The other Anderson you get.
The other Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kevin Anderson, Deputy Chief of Staff for Economic Development in the Mayor's Office. Here, very excited as a fantastic segue from our previous agenda item to come out in support of a transformative project for the City of Omaha, referenced as Project Beacon, aka Mutual of Omaha, and their application for a new downtown headquarters. And as proposed, we've got a site here on 15th and Douglas Street, which is the current site of the W. Dale Clark Main Library, which is currently in the process of being relocated, both as a new central library system and maintaining a downtown branch at a 14th and Jones Street location. That process is consistent with the library's own facilities master plan, initially adopted in 2010 and then again updated in 2017, as well as the current downtown master plan, which fortunately enough calls for this site to be redeveloped as a office tower location. So we're excited that that's exactly the proposal being brought to the committee today in the form of a TIF application for a total TIF application amount of $62.7 million as principal for the TIF request. While there's a large number and coinciding with a large project, as Troy laid out in the TIF process, it's very much in line and consistent with those general rules of thumbs and the applicable and associated public improvements being paid for utilizing these TIF funds. We do have the applicant here who's going to make a presentation, so I won't kind of steal too much of their thunder. But there's a general reason why TIF and other incentives are utilized to further enhance the initiatives as you just adopted, like a urban core master plan, a downtown master plan, or other redevelopment studies or plans that are approved through this process. TIF is an incentive to attract that level of investment to needed areas and to areas where we can maximize the public benefit associated with projects like this. So that's where we always indicate that TIF lies with a project, an application, and not necessarily the applicant themselves, because as our applicant will kind of lay out, there are options for relocation, and even segmenting our own community into pockets of where we want to see development. Downtown or other areas in the urban core are up against other likely more easily or cheaply developed areas in suburban Omaha, or neighboring jurisdictions, or even jurisdictions outside of our community where we lose all public benefit associated with this type of investment and these types of jobs located within our community. So we're here in support of this TIF application because it maximizes the public benefit of a project like this by locating it to where we're trying to encourage the level of density and the level of job creation, resident creation, the level of talent attraction or retention in our area. That's maximized, in our opinion, in areas like the downtown community, and the ability of transformative projects like this to elevate that effort and that process is extremely important to all of our efforts associated with that. As proposed, we do have an office tower housing Mutual of Omaha at the capstone end of our newly invested Gene Leahy Mall and the Riverfront Revitalization Project. It's likely due to investments like that and future investments in areas like the streetcar that projects like this are feasible. My counterpart alluded to that process in the agenda item before this, but projects like this are made possible by actions like you just passed. The limitations on things like parking make projects like this greatly infeasible in the downtown core, because we are so limited by how we park office projects like this. And a streetcar, a mobility system further enhances our ability to enact issues like that by removing a lot of those parking barriers. This project, as an example, is parking less than half of their employee base on site. So we do have to look elsewhere for how to move those employees around and give them options for getting to and from work. So we are here in support. I wanted to make my presence here in support of that. I do have to apologize. I unfortunately have a scheduling conflict. So for any questions, I know Troy, my counterpart, is here and can answer some of those, and Jennifer Taylor and planning staff is certainly available. So I do sincerely apologize, but I did want to come up and express my support. But that being said, I'd be happy to take some questions right now if you have any.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members, and city staff. My name is Jason Lanahan with Lanahan Real Estate Company, Address is 177 Wright Plaza. That's not me. Yeah. Let me- Yeah. We'll give it a shot. All right. That's how things always work. You just tap them, right? Or hit them. In any case, Jason Lanahaw Real Estate Company, 177 Wright Plaza. I'm here on behalf of both my company and also our client, Mutual of Omaha. The name of the project is Project Beacon. In addition, I have Mr. Larry Jobin here with us as well, and he is happy to answer any questions. So, as Mr. Anderson discussed, here's what's before us today. Pretty exciting project. Not that our urban core skyline isn't great today, but you can see the difference tomorrow. So today is pretty exciting, and I'll tell you, I'm pretty excited to be up here. It's not every day I get to come before the board in Omaha, Nebraska, and say we're going to bring 4,000 jobs downtown. We're going to get over $400 million of investment in the urban core, and we're going to change the skyline. It's pretty exciting. We're excited to be a part of the project and present. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about a new headquarters for Mutual of Omaha. 800,000 square feet of office. As Mr. Anderson talked about, 2,200 parking stalls. We'll get into the details, but that parks about half the employee base that will be down in this building. Let me see here. And we are looking to locate the building on the Dale W. Clark Library site at the capstone of the new investment in the Gene Leahy Mall. Another exciting aspect of this is not a vision, a theoretical in the future. If we are able to navigate and get the approvals we need through the various boards and council, we anticipate starting construction in Q1 of 2023. Given the timing constraints we have, we are taking a little bit of a risk, and we are already knees deep in the design. So we're very eager to get started once we work through the process. So I'm going to talk about a few things here today. I'm going to back up a little bit. We're here for tax increment financing, but I think it's important to understand the context of the overall project. So, and hopefully answer some questions I think I can anticipate a little bit here. So 3 legs to what we refer to as Project Beacon. Number 1 is the headquarters tower. $443 million investment in the urban core, 4,000 jobs. The next question might come, well, what about Mutual of Omaha's current campus? Very important question, and what does that mean to our city? So Mutual of Omaha has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Midtown Crossing and have been a great corporate citizen of the area, and under no circumstance are they willing to just vacate and move on and let it be dealt with another day. The second leg of our project is the redevelopment of that campus. Repurposing their current buildings, and there's quite a bit of land to redevelop. We don't know the exact details of that because that does not occur without this, and this doesn't occur without approvals. So, assuming we can navigate through all this, we will be before this board at a later date. I would anticipate about a year from now with a big vision, and I think some new corporate clients, new housing, and new entertainment options. So that's the other leg of it, and we anticipate that is every bit of the same dollar amount we're talking about in the urban core. So big investment for the city, big win in 2 areas. But it's important to talk about, although we are not here on behalf of the streetcar, these 2 are intertwined together. And I say that from a number of reasons. 1, we can't park downtown. We cannot park, and we don't want to park. We don't want to build 4,000 stalls in downtown. We've seen in the past that building parking stalls or parking garages that take up city blocks ruin the fabric of the urban core. It ruins the street life experience and so forth. So the streetcar allows us to not build all the stalls down there. We're building approximately half the stalls we need downtown. And the rest of the stalls will be in the various garages that connect along the streetcar line. So that's like day 1, just straightforward need, okay? But the bigger piece of this is the vision and what it does. So why would Mutual of Omaha build a tower here? Why not stay there? Why not go to suburbia or elsewhere? Because today is all about talent attraction and retention, okay? Omaha, Nebraska, we have a wonderful, healthy economy. We all know that. And we have very low unemployment rate. It's a battle for talent. You don't get talent by building some low-slung, non-visionary building You get talent by being a leader in our community, by being the forefront, and building a building that people want to work in. So that's the building, but how do we attract, we talked in the pre-meeting, the streetcar may not be important for someone that's, you know, in the, let's call it the fourth quarter of their career. But that's not what we're playing for. This is a 100-year building. 50 years for sure. I can't predict that far out, and quite frankly, I doubt I'll be around. So, but it's for that next generation. What do they want? How do we take a student from UNL, from Creighton, from UNO, and say, don't go to the coast, don't go to some other urban core, stay here. We have something exciting for you. That's the streetcar. Come live on the line. Go eat dinner at, go grab a taco at Moolah, come to work, go to the World Series on the streetcar line. That's exciting. That's how we sell Omaha. I love Omaha. I'm a proud resident. But how do we sell the next future, right? Or next future generation? You know, I've read many studies on this, but I think the best way to summarize it is when we lose talent, we don't lose it to other small towns. We don't lose it to other suburbs. We lose it to vibrant, dense urban core cities. So this is more than just a building, but this is the leader that will get us to the vision of what we want to get to. So downtown, midtown, streetcars the glue. To be clear, this is not Mutual's streetcar, okay? But to also be clear, this doesn't happen without the streetcar. This is Exhibit A. Mr. Anderson came up here and said, we will generate $3 billion worth of development in this core. Well, there's $440 million of it right there on day one. Once again, cannot happen, will not happen without the streetcar, okay? The building just doesn't operate the right way. So those are the three legs of it. But to pull back in, we're here to talk about tax increment financing. We've submitted an application, went through the committee. We discussed this morning at pre-meeting as well. And either myself or Mr. Jobin or Mr. Anderson are happy to answer any questions on that matter. Thank you.
Jason, just to be clear, the 4,000 jobs, those are not new jobs. Those are coming from Midtown to downtown.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
But to the point, to be clear, as Mr. Anderson said, since 1963, we've lost 21,000 jobs
Yes.
in the urban core.
Yep.
And to be clear as well, those jobs are coming down, and many more jobs are coming to Midtown.
Jason,
Yes, sir.
Jason, do you know, the work environment today is changing. I don't know if it's changed permanently or not, but you got a lot of work from homes too, and
Yep.
and hybrid models and all sorts of different models that are out there right now. Do you know if Mutual of Omaha anticipates that all 4,000 of those current employees will be office employees going forward? Because they're going to occupy the whole building, I think.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
So do you know what they're seeing with regards to the current
Sure.
work environment?
Yeah, Mr. Pate. So I alluded to it in our pre-meeting. So we've engaged an international architecture firm named HOK, and they were going through this macro programming study of what is the future of work. We're all making a few guesses here, but I think we spent a lot of time on this and have the right team. So there is a portion, a good portion of the work population that will be hybrid. So I think we're out of, for the most part, this. You are here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, okay? But you are there. Everybody is there at some point in time, overlapping, depending on what you're working on. So the office space is changing from, here's my desk with my name on it and the pictures of my family on it, to an interactive hybrid situation. We have different workstations, different collaborative spaces, what's called now neighborhoods, right, where departments work in and share space. So the model's changing, but the 4,000 people will be here in some way, shape, or form during those periods of time. But I must also admit that I understand the talking points of it, but I do not drive the strategy of the employees at Mutual of Omaha.
I understand.
Yep.
And it's a difficult question to answer because we just don't know.
Yeah.
Right, a lot of things unknowns there. But two other questions. So of those 4,000 employees, how many parking stalls exist on the current campus?
I do not know that answer. There are 3 garages and a ton of surface lots.
Yeah, there's enough surface parking or garage parking, I would think, just on
Absolutely.
that campus to be able to handle all the parking that's needed for their employees right now.
Today?
On campus.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, once again, we're looking back at how things were done.
Right.
Everyone needs a spot. You know the rules of thumb, I need 4 cars per 1,000, right?
Yeah.
We know that model doesn't work
And it's a
anymore.
much bigger landmass that they sit
It
on
is.
as well.
It
right,
is.
too. And then what's your timeline on this project?
So we are currently, so to the point, we have, Mutual of Omaha has some older buildings, okay? And we have thousands of employees. They have thousands of employees they need to relocate. So we're on a very quick timeline, okay? So we are running parallel tracks, but we are, to Mutual of Omaha's credit, they're willing to commit some money now to start the design process before we've finished up all the entitlements. And so we are hoping, and we think it's a very important case, or it's got a great story, that we will get approved. But so that's how fast of a timeline we are on. We're already in process, subject to all the approvals and the library being removed. We need to start on our foundation work, and we're calling it 1/1 of 23. We'll just say less than a year from now. 3-year build, every bit of 3 years. We're anticipating the folks moving in Q1 of 26.
Yeah, and I'll just make an editorial comment. I think this is an exciting project for the city of Omaha, as for all the reasons that you mentioned. And anytime you can change the skyline like this, I think is just an enhancement to what already is a beautiful skyline. But between this riverfront project and some of the other stuff that's happening downtown here, I think that we're moving in the right direction, and that doesn't happen just by chance. So I appreciate Mutual's forward thinking and commitment to Omaha and what they're doing here, and I think this will be a huge success.
We thank you.
Thank you.
Approximately 1,200 construction jobs during that process. Also.
1,200 people a day on the job site. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yep. It makes me sweat a little bit knowing the current market for both labor and supply chain, but but we have a lot of folks that want to work on this, and so we intend to use that to our advantage.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Yes.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none, are there any opponents? Tom, you're going to speak again?
I am.
Okay. Need to give your name and address.
Tom Prohaska, 5647 Briggs Street. For those of you who've been around a while, I don't intend to become another R.J. Brown and feel you need to know my opinion about every issue. And this was really the reason I came down here today. And I'm not really opposed to this project, but there are some things I don't understand. And I think a lot of the lack of understanding goes not to Mr. Lanahaw and his attorney, but to the mayor's office. They have not really given us the full picture here, I don't feel, because I don't think Mr. Lanahaw owns the land right now. I think the city of Omaha owns it, and I don't know how that purchase of that land fits into the overall picture. And mainly because I would think this is a very critical piece of land, and if there's going to be a swap for another piece of land downtown, I think there still should be some money thrown in. So it's really more of a question than opposition.
We'll get you an answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Tom. Any other opponents wishing to speak?
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Dewan Hayes. I live at 5835 Corby Street. I'm born and raised here in Omaha, and I'm here to oppose this project. Why am I here to oppose this project today? There was a really interesting statement that Mr. Lanahaw made about what the next generation of Omaha wants. Interestingly enough, I think I might be the youngest person in this room. I wonder why that is. Many people my age are actually at work right now, trying to figure out how to eat, how to feed ourselves, if we're going to be able to afford rent next month. And here we are talking about a building that will not house us, that will not feed us, that will not connect us. And it's happening all the while building a monument to insurance and corporatism on top of a publicly owned temple of knowledge, the library. It's important that this be said because symbols are very important. We talked about the skyline. What does the skyline really mean? What does the skyline truly represent? Who does it reflect? I ask these questions because it doesn't seem like we talk about them. The buildings that are there are not me. They're not my neighborhood. They're not my grandma. They're not my nephews. They're not the people who are putting their lives together to live and be here and are trying to survive and are asking to be listened to. Instead, they are monuments to money. Massive monuments of money. that consume how much energy? Have we talked about how much this building will how much energy this building will consume? Will it be producing its own energy? Will it be entirely solar powered or independent? Most likely not. The thing is, we have not had this conversation as a community. It has been everyone here in their suits talking about what our future is going to look like. Believe it or not, we don't wear suits. We show up as ourselves, and we have very frank conversations about what it is we want. I believe in people. I believe in the place that we live in, and I believe in the planet. This building, this beacon, it does not represent my future, our collective future, if you talk to any of us, if you listen to what any of us have to say. Truly. With all the things that are happening in the world, how is this building solving our problems? It's not. And notice how they're trying to, well, it has to move quickly. It's got to move fast. If it doesn't move fast, it doesn't happen. Then it's obviously not a good plan. Because you know what a good plan is? It takes its time, it works with people, and it understands that the world changes. It's changing every day. That's why I'm here, to show you in your face, to this very present day, that the generations that you think you're handing this off to don't want it. We don't want this. You know what we want? Our planet back, our city back, our culture, to be invested in us, to ask us what we want and to make it actually happen instead of giving us these things that we didn't ask for. I'm raising my voice because this is one of the few places that it can actually happen.
Dewan, I'm going to
Yes.
ask you to.
Yes.
We've
So
got.
I'm sure. Yes, we got a lot of time. We're rushing. We're rushing. We got the next
If
thing
you
to do.
can wrap it
You can
up,
have me
please.
removed. I get it. The point is that as you are rushing in here to get your cases heard, to get the TIF approved, to get your plans and papers shuffled, people are suffering at the very feet, at the base of where you're trying to build this building. They're going to the library so they can have a refuge from the world that does not care about them. What this site will go on one of the last places in downtown Omaha that is free and open to the public and does not require them to prove their worthiness to enter. Think about that. Yes, Mr. Rosenbaum, I'm almost done, but I'm going to make it clear that this generation is here and we are not settling with this. So, my ask to you, if you listened to me, and if you listened to the presentations, that you'll say no. Slow them down. See what happens. Watch them have to recalibrate and actually listen to people. Watch how inflation and the collapse of capitalism, as we speak, happens. And who is going to save you? Who is going to come together? The people, the community, us. Not a building. So, I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dewan.
Have a great day.
All right, thank you. Any other opponents? Dewan, did you want to stay and they'll address your comment?
Not really, because I
All right.
could stay and wait. I could stay and wait and hear. And I've listened. And I've listened to the talking points that have been delivered to us.
Okay. All right.
But rarely are they ever listening to what
Dewan,
we have to say.
I'm gonna cut
I
you off.
understand. Okay, cut me off.
All right.
But I need you to listen.
Dewan,
I came here to raise my voice.
Dewan, we listened.
because-
If you don't sit down now, I'm going to have you removed. It was just that you were leaving, and I wanted you to know that there's going to come back and have a rebuttals. But if you don't want to listen to it, that's all right. So which do you want to go? Do you want to leave or do you want to sit?
That's a really good question. This is a really wise, this is something we should all practice right now. I am really upset because as a young person, I'm sitting here watching a bunch of old white guys decide my future in front of me.
I'm going to ask you to sit down, otherwise.
And so I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna sit down.
Okay, all right, thank you, Dewan. All right, thank you. Any other opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Jason, Troy, either one of, Tom came up, talked about the land. Any one of you want to, either one of you, I should say.
Troy Anderson, Deputy Chief of Staff, Mayor's Office. I'll answer the question regarding the land. So, as part of our negotiations thus far, you've heard about the need to be along a transit corridor associated with the parking and everything we've just talked about the last hour or so. So knowing and understanding the streetcar route and knowing and understanding the opportunity that presents itself with the W. Dale Clark Library. This is not something new. This has been in the works. I don't have my information in front of me today, but as part of the Library Facilities Master Plan, the Library Facilities Master Plan years ago suggested that the W. Dale Clark building is ineffective and inefficient, and the library system as a whole is not based around a downtown corporate center. That the central distribution needs to be more centrally located. It's a hub and spoke model, right? So that the central distribution, access to genealogy, access to special collections, et cetera, right now are in Dale Clark. The recommendation that came out of the Library Facilities Master Plan said that needs to be more centrally located. So removal and demolition of the Dale Clark Library is nothing new. That's been a talking point for 7+ years now. So what we are proposing is a new downtown branch, which is consistent with that same facilities master plan, at 1401 Jones. It's a historic building. There's a lot of really cool, really exciting things that we're hoping to turn that building into for a downtown branch that serves downtown residents. We're going through public input on that, knowing and understanding what the community, what the neighborhood that the branch location is serving can offer. We're also going through a similar process as it relates to the future of what a new central library, possibly at the intersection of 72nd and Dodge, what that might look like. We've got stakeholders from across the spectrum, young and old, who are all providing input on what a central library, a main library of the future might look like, what the wants and needs are of the community, not just of the neighborhood, but of the larger city. So as part of our negotiations, yes, we will enter into a land swap. Mr. Lanahaw and Lanahaw Development Company, I'm not sure the name on the actual title, but owns the former UP site a couple blocks away. It's a full downtown block that is vacant, unoccupied, undeveloped right now. Understand if you kind of fast forward, understanding that a Dale Clark Library will get demoed, the land swap is of a mindset that the value of each of those blocks is virtually a wash, right? In fact, we are going through the appraisal processes right now. We have requested appraisals, not only on the former UP site, Mr. Lanahaw's property, but also of the library site, the value of the property, so that when we know and understand as part of the negotiations, we fully anticipate that the cost of a square foot of downtown dirt is probably going to be nearly equal within a couple blocks of each other. So that's the land swap that we're talking about. Most likely what would occur is we'll continue to go through library relocation. We've got an owner's rep on board. We're going through architect engineer responses currently. We'll finish out those 2 tenants. We'll relocate all of Dale Clark to Central and to 1401 Jones. Well, then the plan is to demo Dale Clark in the 4th quarter of this year. That would all be under sort of city ownership, and then towards December 31st, January 1st, go through the real estate closing, real estate transactions, and transfer title. The city would assume the former UP site that Lanahaw owns, and Lanahaw would own then the current W. Dale Clark Library site, so that they could then commence construction of Project Beacon. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Jason, did you want to add anything about where you were talking about young talent coming in and the studies that your architects and people have done?
Yeah, sure.
Right.
So I'm going to try to stay focused on this project here.
Yeah.
I don't have the answers for the world, but we do care about our city, and we think we're moving it forward in a way that employers want.
Can you give your name and address again, please?
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
sorry.
Jason Lanahaw, Lanahaw Real Estate Company. 177 Wright Plaza. So, and I will tell you, Mr. Rosenbaum, that the folks that we have on our team are folks with international experience. They come from New York City, they come from Los Angeles, they do projects in London, they do projects in Paris. I'd say, I'm not saying everyone has 100% of the answers, but we got a pretty dang good team of folks that have been guiding us for well over a year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Mike, did you want to add anything?
Just recommend approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
We have a,
What a waste of time, thanks.
have a good day. We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Solongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, the next item is 15, is that correct, Dave? All right, it was on consent, it was taken off. Agenda item number 15, case C10-22-63, applicant Teresa Botos. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R2 to R5, location 8909 Burt Street. And is the applicant here? Will you come down and give us a short presentation of your request? Need your name and address, please.
Teresa M. Botus, 5642 Lake Street. Okay, so when I purchased the property, it was already almost like a duplex. It had family living above with a office in the lower level, and the steps were removed. So I would like to just make it into a duplex because everything around it is R7 and R5s, I do believe. And just make it as a duplex. So we're talking about housing. There's not enough housing. At least I can add 2 more families into housing. So, you know, that makes perfectly logical sense to me. And there's apartment complexes right on the other side of it. So I see no problem in having 2 more families have a nice place to live.
Okay.
It is pretty much, yes, it's a duplex.
Yep. Okay, any other questions for Teresa? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. My name is Mike McDermott, 705 North 89th Plaza. I'm the treasurer of the Birch Tree Lofts Homeowners Association, which is directly adjacent to the property it's mentioned.
And I'm Erin Wilson, 747 North 89th Plaza, and I'm the president of the Birch Tree Homeowners Association. Mike will be testifying for the group.
Okay, thank you. Go
We're
ahead,
here to
Mike.
recommend a no vote on the rezoning of the particular property, and we'll give some background on that. Basically, as I think as Teresa mentioned, the property was previously zoned and is now, basically, the property is an eyesore. It is somewhat run down. There are multiple, up to 6 trash cans outside with blowing trash across the property. In the summer, the lawn is basically knee-high. The mailbox is consistently knocked down in the front of the house. I believe, and maybe Teresa can validate this, that the house either was previously or may be currently used as some type of a halfway house. So I'm not sure that the concept of family living is in fact accurate. I think there are multiple groups of folks that live there, not to mention dogs barking continuously throughout the day and night. So bottom line, it's not been a good neighborly relationship with the property and Birch Tree Lofts. Not to mention the fact that the zoning is essentially being backed into after the fact. We just don't think that's a good way to go about this particular zoning initiative. We'd like to see a long-term project plan for what the property is used for now, what it's going to be used for, and how a transition from R2 to R5 would help the property and basically help the neighborhood. We just don't think that we think that the current proposal circumvents the authority of this group and basically it's not a good value added to basically back into a compliance initiative. We think this is a backing in of the compliance initiative. So that's our position for Birch Tree Lofts. We recommend a no vote.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mike. Just a second. Are there any other opponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Teresa, would you like to come down? You'll have to give your name and address again. Sorry about that. We just need it for the record
Okay.
always.
Teresa Botus, 5642 Lake Street. And yes, it was an Oxford home many years back. And there was rundown renters that were ran down many years back. And the people that were occupying the residence is no longer there as of last month. So that will not be an issue. And I am refurbishing the place. So it won't be ran down and an eyesore no longer. However, I would like to have it as a duplex, like I said, because there are multiple families in this world that do need places to live, you know, that are not, I guess, fortunate enough to have a development or, you know, neighborhood, whatever. So,
What are you doing to refurbish the home?
What, you have to-
redoing the deck,
Deck.
keeping up with the yard work, the mailbox. Speaking of the mailbox, yes, I am very aware of that. I'm just trying to figure out where I can put the mailbox to where it won't keep getting knocked down, and making sure that the tenants do keep their trash in the bin, and their trash isn't blowing around. And one dog, allow one dog, no more than one dog to live on the property, because I'm a pet lover, but I do know pets are a nuisance. But however, people do have pets, so.
I apologize if you said this already, but are you a new property owner?
I am a
this?
new
Okay.
property owner,
Okay.
yes.
How long have you owned it?
I'm thinking probably about 6 months ago.
Okay. So your plan in buying this was to refurbish
Yes,
it,
to
re-tenant
refurbish it, to have good tenants,
Gotcha.
and to keep it clean.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Any
thank
more
you,
questions?
Teresa. I
Okay.
think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments, questions? Did you want to add anything, Mike?
Yeah, I guess just to clarify, obviously it's not preferred that however the process got to be where there is some form of an existing duplex there. The current zoning doesn't allow duplex residential on the property, the R2. The first district that does allow that is the R5. The master plan is allowing that and supports that zoning change. So that is justification for us to support the request. Now, obviously, all the issues related to code violations that are on the property existing will need to be addressed. She'll have to comply with all the requirements of the building code to have a duplex on the property, whatever building requirements or fire requirements, whatever those are, will still have to be complied with. All this does is to allow the property to be utilized as a duplex, and she'll have to address all those other issues separately.
So it won't, the property won't stand as it is. If it was in disrepair, we're allowing it to become a duplex, and then everything else will have to be fixed according to code so that it's up to par as the city sees fit, correct?
Well, if for some reason the property didn't get rezoned, then she would have to still address whatever code violation she has on the property.
Right.
I think have been there since 2017, I believe. But obviously then the issue of the duplex would have to be addressed since it was never legal to begin with. So this is her way of trying to bring the property legal for what the previous owner has constructed on the property to bring it into compliance, and that R5 would allow that. It is consistent with the master plan, so we do recommend approval.
Thank you.
In the map in our board packet, all the properties to the right are single-family homes, and then to the left, that's a large apartment complex.
Well, to the right, I think, is their property. And it's R5, the same
Right.
zoning that she's asking for, and then
But on
obviously
the other side, those are single-family homes?
to the north.
Why, I'm sorry, I can't tell.
To the east, I think you're
To the
talking.
right.
To the right, that's the R5. Everything on the south side of Birch Street is either R5 zoning next to her or the R7 zoning. So she's sort of, the R5 isn't out of character for what's already on the south side of Birch Street. Now, on the north side, there's some single-family homes in the R2 that are larger lot type of development, and then you also have some office also on the corner. But the R5 would be consistent with what's there.
Do you have this in this map?
And I guess the other
Okay.
comment I would make is just that, I would assume that if the owner, the current owner wants to make improvements and finance it, the zoning has to be correct before they could be able to do that, so.
Mr. Chairman, can I just comment?
No, just a second. Any additional comments or questions?
And that includes the code violations that exist, right?
Did anybody, come on up, if you can keep it short.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I guess I would suggest that the kind of, Mike McDermott, 705 North 89th Plaza. I might suggest that the decision be held in advance for possibly 6 months until the potential for the fixes for the current zoning, the R1, R2 zoning, be complied with, and then another decision at that point be made.
Okay, thank you. All right, any additional comment, Mike?
Nope.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the repeal of the PUD planned oops, wrong
Nope,
one.
wrong one.
Wrong.
You guys go ahead, I'm on the wrong
I
page.
move for approval of the rezoning from R2 to R5. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
No.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Pate,
Yes.
Sodolongo. No. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 5-2.
Just an editorial comment for you, sir, that by doing this, then she's in compliance with the zoning, which clears up her ability to finance and do the repairs that she wants. If we would say no, she would have to do it all out of cash. She couldn't finance anything on it. And so this is actually an inducement to her to do this. It doesn't change anything as far as the code compliance. She still has to code comply. So, just for your clarity. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Agenda item number 18, case C11-12-70A, C10-22-66, C10-98-166. Applicant, Dr. Terry Bolamperty. Hope I said. Bolamperty. Request rezoning from R6 PUD to MU with approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development plan for Pegasus, along with repeal of the plan unit development overlay district. Location, southwest of 132nd and 4th Street. May we hear from the applicant?
Good afternoon.
Representative, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Douglas Dreesen, 10836 Old Mill Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. Dr. Bolamperty's the president of the American Italian Heritage Society, but his name's on this application. Some of you may recall the palazzo that American Italian Heritage Society built a few years back on this site. It's the southern portion here that's actually existing. What's shown there is existing. This northern portion up to the left is what we're proposing the zoning change for. We've met with the staff twice. We've had 2 neighborhood meetings with the homeowners association to the west to try to come to a understanding of what's best for the neighborhood there. What we submitted to you guys does not include the fence that's shown on this plan. That came out of our meetings with the neighbors. There was a desire for a 6-foot tall fence to prevent people from walking straight into the backyards. We understand that 4th Street's on the short-term list for improvement. Years ago, when we first looked at this site, The area on the upper right is a US West Lumen facility that has a driveway fairly tight to 132nd and Fort. As you might all imagine, if you haven't been up there, that intersection's doing nothing but increasing in traffic. So I think the city's a little concerned about taking traffic off of that. The improvement of Fort Street will do that. Originally, you'll see that little crescent up in the upper left. We approached the owners of that property to try to line up our driveway with the street across on the north. I'll pull this down a little bit so you can see where that is. They weren't real enthused about us adding that connection. So we came back, talked to the staff again, and they said if we can just move our driveway as far west as practical, that they could support it, since Fort's going to be a separated 4-lane section in the future. So that's what we've done there. Their other concern was, what about westbound traffic coming off the site? Our only real solution for that, without running it back through 132nd and Fort, was to connect to the dead-end Brown Street, which I'll slide this again, is down on your lower left-hand side. So that's what we're here for. As you might imagine, for Social Hall, COVID's been very difficult on the finances. I don't know if any of you have been up to some of their festivals they hold up there. If you have, you've experienced the traffic issues. We have a shuttle that shuttles parkers from Tranquility Park up to the site. So this is a very popular festival that's held. I think this year they held it back in South Omaha where it originated. One of the things that we thought as we looked at this was additional parking would really help the facility. What we wanted to do is create a parking that would be mutually beneficial. We didn't think our 6 apartments would create that opportunity. We think an office building, similar to what's shown here, with people working during the day primarily and then leaving at night and being gone on the weekends, would be a great complement to the way the hall operates, where most of the activity is at night and on the weekends. Additionally, we think we can attract a co-developer with this being zoned for office as opposed to apartments. So that's how we've arrived at this plan. What you see in front of you is a 2-story office building that's been maxed out. The parking that's shown on site is adequate for it. Our intent would be to do cross-parking easement between the 2 properties, as well as an access easement across both properties. So the office building would be very accessible and easy to leave. We've got landscaping shown on the west side all the way along. The fence does go all the way to the south property line as well. So with that, I've got the owners, Dr. Bolenpurdy's here, and John Portera from the American Italian Heritage Society, as well as my colleague Ben Drews, who can get way down in the weeds if you guys want to go there. We're not asking for any TIF on this project either. So with that, we humbly request your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Chairman and members of the board, my name is David Held, address 15715 Leavenworth Street, and I'm representing a nearby business, DJH Enterprises LLC. I appreciate that he spoke to some of the traffic concerns related to Fort Street. That is probably one of my primary concerns, is opening up now essentially a private driveway onto Fort Street from the already existing accesses that are there. Anybody, as he knows, anybody in that area, it's quite congested, particularly during rush hour times, and with all the development to the west, it's probably going to increase. So I'm here, I guess, very curious as to what types of businesses might actually be considered for that property. And if there's, and I realize that they're looking to help the Italian American Society, that's quite honorable. There are quite a number of other properties that are vacant and open in the area. So from just a commercial development standpoint, within a 1.5 mile area, I physically counted about 6 different sites that are available for build out of any kind of commercial properties. So again, those are my concerns, and what that might do to the additional traffic load on Fort Street as it continues to increase. So if you might be able to address that in terms of what types of businesses, how busy of traffic that might be, that would be appreciated.
All right, thank you, David. Any other opponents?
I'm George Ludwig, and I live at 27299 South Dakota Highway 44, White River, South Dakota. I am one of the managing entities of this organization, so large it includes me and my wife. So it is Ludwig Property Management. We own the property at 5101 North 134th Street, which is right here on the map. The most compelling standard in zoning is the assertion of compatible use. The plan of this district is to consider transitions between these uses. This indicates the existing intent of zoning this area adjacent to Hillsborough as R6 15 years ago should remain as R6. There's 15 years of city planning around this. Well, you'll find out in a minute. To rezone this mixed-use district is to introduce a non or less compatible use area to this residential area. Whether this happens immediately or over time is of no comfort as to the businesses located there. It is the same result. For a planning board to approve this would be contradicting the intent of the current mission statement of the code. For example, these 16 years of city planning all went around this. We know that the traffic in these external residential areas are about one traffic every 4 blocks, one traffic light every 4 blocks. The only way to accomplish this is on 132nd Street, not Fort Street. The current plan directs a private drive dumping commercial traffic right into a residential area via this private drive here onto Brown Street. I don't even know how this plan even got to this point. I'm asking the board, because of these proceedings, to reject this request for zoning change, further to dead-end Brown Street in perpetuity, and place a covenant on the Pegasus lots 3, 4, 5, and 6 to construct a privacy fence placed and maintained by the owners of the Pegasus properties. In the original presentation, it indicated that just Lot 6 was requested the zoning change, when in truth, the zoning change appeared on lots 2 through 6. So this indicates to me that not only is the sale and development of this Lot 6 inevitable, but also 2 through 6 are inevitable. We're adamantly opposed to this rezoning for the following reasons. Of course, and I don't blame the owners for trying to rezone this and increase the marketability. I get it. but we still have the compatible use issue. This will also diminish, while trying to increase this property value, it will also diminish the property values adjacent. My home, the home that I bought for my parents, this is a one-sided transaction. This plan should not proceed. And if I go over time and somebody else wants to speak from the community, just tap me on the shoulder and I'll cut it off. The traffic from the proposed development of this type is proposed in this mixed-use district has a route right through the residential Hillsborough, as mentioned, where residents can walk and take their families for a walk unencumbered by traffic not associated with the area. And this gives the immediate area of 134th Street its value. If injury occurs in this pedestrian traffic, it is my opinion that it will lead itself to a case of nothing short of negligence. This route further serves no purpose to residents of Hillsborough, as businesses have not been identified.
George?
Yeah.
Can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
We have what, you're just reading
Right,
from what
I'm
you
just
gave
reading
us.
it.
We have that.
Okay, I'll get
so-
to the punch then.
Put that in the record.
Yeah,
All right, thanks. I appreciate that.
you bet.
So, some of the details, the deciduous trees that are presented there are honey locusts. Is that right? They have thorns and beans that drop in. The Hill Housing Authority has to clean all that up. We use that parking spot for snow staging. Snow removal gets piled up there and then it gets melted or removed. It's not a non-functional area for the Housing Authority. So what brought me here is I sit as a chair on my county's zoning board. And I read through your zoning code as much as I could. God bless you for having such a massive document. But also the offset of 15, 16 feet for R6 seems to be stated, but in mixed use, there's not one stated, and I didn't know if parking lots had anything to do with that offset as well. Because that puts that private drive right on the other side of that fence, and there is no way you're going to get a landscaping plan in that area, especially when we recommend conifers for noise reduction as opposed to deciduous trees. So I leave you with one final thought, since you have this, and is that a litmus test. The mixed-use district in your code and the R6 district in your code are completely different. Mixed use allows you to bring in all types of businesses not yet determined. Could be a cocktail lounge, could be a liquor store, could be anything like that. That is not what we want in our neighbors. The R6 and the current American Italian Heritage Association are great neighbors. But changing the zone is not the way to address the needs of everybody in the area. The litmus test is this. If you were to live right there, would you want this to happen? The answer is emphatically no. Why would you want commercial traffic right out your doorstep? That is the conclusion of my remarks. Do you have any questions of me?
Any questions for George?
Thank you for your time.
George. Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Mr. Dreesen, did you want to come up and address David and George's concern?
Certainly. Mixed use requires a mixed use development agreement, which is part of your recommendation. The agreement stipulates this will be a 2-story office building, similar or exactly like what's shown on this plan. So in order to do anything different here, the person that wants to do something different will be back in front of you to modify the mixed-use development plan. It doesn't open Pandora's box to anything and everything happening here. Mixed use gives you guys a chance to evaluate the plan for what it is, with the assurance that what we show you is what it's going to be. So I'll add that. As far as the landscaping is concerned, we're open to any type of vegetation that meets the city's requirements along the west side. I believe in the rec report, it was mentioned, move the driveway on the south leg of it where it kind of zigs over there to 20 feet off the property line. We're willing to do that as well. We did get some comments in the neighborhood meetings about that becoming a, quote, back door through the neighborhood. And we're willing, if this plan were to go forward, to restrict that with some sort of gate, provided that the buyer of the property is amenable to that. We don't want to hamstring ourselves in the sale of the property. I haven't looked at other available property. As you guys are well aware, there's a lot of development going on in the city. This is not something that the society is going to build. This is not something where we have a partner identified. This is something that we think makes a lot more sense for our facility and for this corner. Ultimately, Lumen, when Fort Street gets improved, will be required to move their driveway to the west and connect to Fort Street. So ultimately, that connection's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Will this plan ultimately materialize? I think you guys have been here long enough to know that if you don't have somebody that's going to build it, it's likely going to change in some manner, and it's going to come back before you. I don't see progress slowing down in this area. If anything, it's likely going to speed up. So,
A couple questions for you, Doug, or maybe your clients can answer the questions. But obviously, you address traffic. Other people have addressed. I worry about the traffic too. There, it's tough. I've been through that bit. It was at this across the street at the convenience store there. Tried to go west onto Fort Street from that exit, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a summer day, and I couldn't get out to go west. Right, just a steady flow of traffic. Same problem's going to happen here, most likely. So I do worry about that. Second of all, you talked about, I've been to the festival, good festival, and I love your Italian sausage too, by the way. So the traffic is unbearable. I mean, it's and I don't know if you're going to continue to have your festival there or not. But I worry about the overflow of cars that want to park in the neighborhood from that festival as well. So you talked about restricting possibly with a gate, which I think would probably be the best thing that you could do, regardless of the marketability of your property there, because that will be a real problem for the neighbors in there. So can you talk about that at all?
certainly. I want to emphasize we don't have a tenant for that building. My understanding from Public Works is that the improvements to Fort Street are foreseeable. They're going to happen soon. If we sold the property tomorrow, I'm not sure we could get that developed prior to Fort Street being built. The issue is, and I think if you look back at the R6 PUD, we actually showed a huge parking lot where the office building sits now. The concerns are all well taken. We think the office use is a more compatible use with the existing facilities that's there. We've got a phone company building next to us. I think residential to office to something like a phone building is not that unusual in Omaha. For the society, it's important for them, with the financial blow that they've been given due to COVID, to have options. The R6, to Mr. Ludwig's point, has been there for 15 years with no takers.
But do you really think that because of some of the issues that we've raised here, that by doing this, we'll make it more marketable?
Yes.
You do, even with the potential kind of choke point with the cross traffic there on Fort Street. I know you're trying to open it up through the neighborhood there so they can get out that way, but I don't know how many of them will take advantage of that.
Well, I think if you look at this, Mike, it's easy to see the two and a huge number of parking spots there. But the reality is, I think, excepting the festival, most of the time those parking lots, half of them are going to be empty. The people working in the office building are going to park near the office building. The people attending events at the Palazzo are likely going to park on that eastern parking. This gives a little flexibility for the office. If they have a big event, they can overflow into the Palazzo parking. If the Palazzo has a huge reception, there's some overflow parking down to the office. That stuff can all be worked out between the owners. How are we going to do this? The owner of the office building may say, well, we don't want anybody parking in that northern tier of parking. We may agree to that. The other thing I might add is if you're going west, if you're coming to the office from the west, you're likely going to come down Fort Street on the 4-lane, make the right in, work there all day, and then go back out either the backside through the neighborhood, which admittedly, being an engineer, I do that stuff all the time, but most people don't. They stay on the arterial street. So a lot of people going west will go out to 132nd Street, go down to, whoops, I tried not to touch that thing. We'll go down to Maple.
Yeah, I agree.
It is kind of a back door. I'll just give a personal instance. When I go to the Lancer hockey games, I go through the back roads of Ralston because I know everybody else that only goes there once in a while is going to be on 72nd Street, and I'm going to wait in line. So that's where we're at with it. I'm not sure apartments are any better than this use. Then you've got people every day coming and going, and you don't get the benefit of the shared parking. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it's just a tough piece of property to work with regards to traffic and the flow of traffic. Right now, the way that Fort Street's only 2 lanes there. So.
Right, does that answer
the
questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Mike.
Okay, so I'll put together some comments. I know the comments about the zoning. The intersection of 132nd and 4th Street is designated as a 30-acre mixed-use intersection. So it would support the rezoning of the property from R6 to MU as long as they're compliant with all the MU regulations that we can talk about a little bit later. So the master plan does allow that based on the location of the intersection at 132nd and 4th being designated for mixed use. Obviously in the plan you can tell as far as the connection into the neighborhood, that stub has always been there, so it's ready to be connected. I believe the original plan when the social club came in was to route like a drive along the south side of the building and connect back to the parking lot on the east side of the social club. That was, I think, a future phase, I believe, of their project. So it's always intended to be connected to back into the neighborhood. Obviously, the size of these smaller mixed-use areas can pose a challenge sometimes, because you end up with situations like this that have, since the mixed-use areas are on these arterial intersections and arterial streets, at some time those streets are going to have medians in them that don't allow for the free flow of traffic east and west out of their intersections at these size centers. So we do have the situation where we have commercial traffic going back through the residential area, but that's the nature of that size of intersection and mixed-use area. I guess those are some of the basic answers I had. Just to address some of the city comments that we had in the report, we do recommend that mixed use is acceptable, subject to submitting revised plans to address some of the comments in the report, talking about providing for pedestrian-oriented open space that's required by the mixed-use regulations, providing the 7% interior landscaping for the new building site, and also the drive that has been mentioned that goes to the south and connects to Brown. That has to be moved over to provide at least a 20-foot separation between the drive and the property line on the west. Any fencing that would be put up would have to be at the interior of the buffer yard. So essentially, the fence wouldn't be at the property line. It would be at sort of the edge of the parking area for the office building. So that then allows the benefit of the additional 20 feet to the residential property to have that, versus having the 20 feet on the fence, on the office side of the fence. So that doesn't make much sense. So that would just have to be shifted over to provide that additional space and buffer yard that the code does require. There are a couple other things regarding the site statistics table and things like that that have to be coordinated with staff on, but we feel that can be done and an acceptable plan can be provided.
Okay.
So we would recommend approval of the repeal of the PUD and approval of the rezoning from R6 to MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement prior to forwarding to City Council.
Do we have a motion?
Motion for approval of the repeal of the PUD overlay district and the approval of the rezoning from R6 to MU, subject to submittal of an acceptable final mixed-use district development agreement prior to forwarding to City Council.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Hay,
I'm going to vote yes, but would encourage you to really investigate putting a gate on that property. You are? Before we vote?
That's okay.
Before we vote?
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify. So I have three things I'd like to say. So as this board knows, and as city council's here, traffic is always an issue in developing areas. The development's ahead most of the time of those public improvements that can't be put into place. I think the planning department, I think the public works department does a real good job of knowing that, right? We know that the traffic is heavy in developing areas, and the transportation network has to have some time to catch up. So there will be improvements to 132nd and Ford. That should help in this area. Second point I'd like to make is this piece of property was zoned mixed use prior to it being R6. So when this piece of ground was first entitled, it was envisioned to be mixed use. That plan didn't work out, and a number of years ago, the Italian Society came to us and said, listen, we want to locate our facility here, so staff worked with them to get it zoned to R6. So this request is kind of going back to what it was before. And the last thing I'd say is I'd caution any use of a gate on a permanent basis to cut off traffic. So I believe the Italian American Society needs to come in for a temporary use permit when they have their festival. I think staff would be, and staff signs off on those, I think we'd be amenable to closing that off during the festival times, but not necessarily during regular business hours and for the other 362 days out of the year.
And I concur with that.
Okay, thanks.
Do we want, Jennifer, can we amend the motion at this point? Because I already called for a vote. If anybody wanted to, or we can. Yeah, the motion's been made.
The person who made the motion can withdraw it if they want, or you can proceed with your vote.
Okay. Do you want to,
Who made the motion? I did.
do you want to, go
I
ahead.
might just recommend, let's go ahead with the vote, and I'll just publicly state that I think it would be in everyone's best interest if you sought that temporary use permit that was addressed during the festival. Okay, let it be in their hands to do that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Sonalongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Agenda item number 25, case C7-17-149, applicant St. Wenceslaus Church, request approval of a major amendment to the conditional use permit assumed to allow religious assembly in the R4 district. Location, 15353 and 15357 Pacific Street. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Good afternoon. Ed Teal, 14418 Cedar Circle. I'm the chair of the building committee for St. Wenceslaus. Father Tom Bowens, our pastor, is unavailable today. He's on retreat, mandated by the Archbishop. So here I am.
Lucky you.
He did ask me to give about a sermon length dissertation. It's 4 o'clock, not going to do it. So I'm here today to talk about the bells. This is the bell tower. I can't get quite in the right place. Our bells are too loud, and some of the neighbors have complained, and so this hearing is the result, or our application is the result of our being in violation, and that is, I agree that is certainly true. Several weeks ago, we made an adjustment to the bells, an electronic adjustment, I'll call it, and we were unsuccessful in achieving any kind of reduction in the noise level. We've been working with the Verdant Company who supplied our bells. There's 5 bells in that bell tower up in the top there, if you see that, and then 1 down low. So we have recently been able to schedule with the Verdant Company to have their tech come the week of March 21st. So what's that, about 3 weeks from now? They promised to adjust the clapper of the bell, and I'm going to geek out on you a little bit. The way bells work now is they're fixed, and there's a clapper inside the bell, and it goes up against the bell to create the tone. So they believe, and I believe that the Verdant Company has had this problem before. They believe the clapper can be adjusted to achieve the appropriate decibel rating at the property line. And I don't know for sure exactly what decibel rating we're at now in the 65 to 70 neighborhood. And the approved, the allowable is 60 decibels during the day. There's some hours for that, and 55 at night. Our goal is to achieve 55 decibels, not necessarily to ring the bells all the time, but just to be able to be quieter. Not sure where 55 ends up. We may need to go to 60 to have enough volume to ring the bells during the day. Right now, the bells ring on the quarter hour, and they ring for 1 minute before every Mass, which is 5 p.m. on Saturday, 8, 10, and 12 on 8, 10, 12, and 5:30 on Sunday. And I'm not sure, but I think we probably ring them for weddings, which occur Friday nights and Saturdays, and funerals, which occur many different times, but typically during the day on Monday through Friday and then on Saturday. And they would typically be in the mornings or the early afternoons. And that's we don't intend to change that schedule, assuming that we can achieve the proper decibel rating. If we can't achieve the proper decibel rating with mechanical means by the Verdant Company tech, there's another electric solution to lower, again, I'm going to geek out, to lower the input voltage so you have less clapper strength. So what I'm asking for today is permission to continue to ring our bells until we have the opportunity to have a technician come and revise the volume, and at that time, our intention is to become compliant.
Ed, what would be the harm of You said 3 weeks?
Right.
What would be the harm of just discontinuing for 3 weeks?
I think Father's position is we have the investment in bells, and we've been ringing the bells, and he'd like to continue to ring them.
And
I don't
not
think,
to
yeah,
get-
I can't say there is really any harm. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't have bells before the new church.
You've got an investment in the neighborhood and all your neighbors also,
True.
so.
You did have bells at the old church.
Yeah, in fact, the bell that's lower, that's just right where we run off the picture there, is the bell that came from the church previous to the previous church. It was cast in 1889, and it's hung there also, and we have the capability of ringing that. Yeah, and those bells did ring. That bell did ring on Sundays, and I'm not sure what other times. It did not ring in the last few years. I'm not sure if there was some kind of problem with it or what, but yeah,
Is
it's
that bell still there?
yeah, we refurbished that bell, and it's hanging right here.
It's just displayed now. Oh, that's right, I've seen it.
And we have the capability of ringing that too. That's what they call, we would toll that bell where it's just gong, gong, gong kind of thing.
Could you ring that instead of the bell towers? Just during the time?
Yeah, I think we could. Couldn't tell you that the decibel level of that is any better. I doubt that it is, because it's a large bell. I don't know for sure which bells are causing the problem. If it's all 5, if it's just 1 or 2, I don't know. I'll know that in 3 weeks.
Any other questions for Ed? Thanks, Ed. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, any opponents? I'm guessing you folks want to.
Last man standing.
Yeah, last one's here.
Before I start, I was told I should be able to put up some video and some images. I don't know if that's something I can get to. All right. Thanks, everybody. Sorry, I've never done this before, so I'm a little nervous. My name's Chad Harrell. I live at 1511 South 152nd Circle. I don't have anything to show up here, but I do have some pictures, and you guys do have my letter, and I'm not going to read it verbatim. But our property is directly adjacent to the church, and as shown in there, we're less than 400 feet from the bell tower to the back of our house. As was mentioned, this bell, which is 59 feet above grade, which is higher than or right at the same level as our windows within the back of our house, it does ring from 8 to 8 every 15 minutes. And as I described in that document there, it's not just every 15, like just one bell. It's one bell at 15, 2 at 30, 3 at 45, 4 at the hour, and then the bell also rings the quantity of the hour. So the worst case situation, like at noon, you're ringing a significant amount of bell rings. So I guess if I can get this to work here real quick. Oh, it does work. Let's try to pause it. So anyway, I'll let you guys listen to this for a minute.
Is this the noon bell?
This is the noon bell. This is the noon bell.
I think we've got it.
Okay, that's it. So that's the noon bell. So yeah, just to give you a little insight. So that's the noon bell. This was taken from the next door neighbor's backyard on her back patio. So as stated in my document, this bell rings over 200 times a day. As mentioned before, prior to if there was a bell, we didn't hear a bell. And so we're not really understanding what the purpose of this bell is ringing that many times. It is one just statement. So I'm going to address this from a couple different perspectives, and I apologize. I'm not a very polished public speaker here, but thanks. So in my professional capacity, I'm an electrical engineer, licensed in the state of Nebraska. So when we're designing projects, and as you all are familiar with, I'm sure, when you submit a set of documents to get a permit, there's a professional stamp on that set of documents, and that's saying we are abiding by all the rules, regulations, and laws that meet the authority having jurisdiction for whatever you're submitting for. And as stated in my document, the performance standards for the city of Omaha in section 55 are the ones that list these decibel level requirements. And so for sound that can be provided onto a residential zone, R4 zoned area, it is 60 decibels. So I apologize. And so that time frame is from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. that's 55 decibels. So point being, when this church was designed, it's the due diligence of that design team to make sure that all these codes are met. And so by not having met these, this was installed and is now continues to operate unlawfully. And so, kind of like some comments that were made on earlier issues, this is kind of a back door. We're trying to back into this. We've installed this illegally. Doesn't meet the code. It's operating continuously, and now we're going to come back and ask for forgiveness, essentially. As was stated, the allowable level is 60 decibels. When they came out on November 17th to measure the first time, it was measured at 74.1 decibels, and they did say they were going to try to adjust those down. And so when they came back out December 6th to remeasure, they are still operating at 68.7 decibels, which is still well above the allowed sound level. And like I said, it's 206 times per day. In addition to the section 55 for a performance standard, as I included in my document, there's also sections 17 and 18, which deal with the nuisance and a definition of a nuisance. And then also there's the noise ordinance. And obviously the noise ordinance appears to be written more towards vehicle sound and things like that. But what the noise ordinance states is the policy of the city is to reduce the noise level in the city and to preserve, protect, and promote health, safety, and it'll basically allow the peace and quiet of its inhabitants. And then Chapter 18, from a nuisance standpoint, definition of a nuisance is that it interferes with the quiet enjoyment of life and property, or tends to depreciate the value of the property or others. Point being, there's multiple avenues that are in the zoning code, the city code, that address these types of issues, and they're there for a reason. And that reason being, nobody wants to sit in their house and listen to 200 bells ring at nearly 70 decibels, which for comparison, or to put that into perspective, 70 decibels is essentially what a vacuum cleaner runs at.
Can I ask, would
yes.
you mind if the decibel level were appropriate, would you mind hearing it 200 times a day?
No, and
You wouldn't?
that's a different path outside of here.
You would still mind, or you would not mind?
No, the quantity is a whole separate issue.
But it's still an issue?
It's still an issue, a big issue, yes. This is just the first step down our path here. As stated in my letter, we did go to the leadership of the church and tried to have a discussion and let them know about our discontent with how this is being operated. And the resolution to that was, instead of ringing from 7 to 10, they said they would ring from 8 to 8. That was it. So this is our next step. Luckily, we have adjacent neighbor. We have an adjacent neighbor who works for the city, has worked for the city, and so he brought this to our attention that here's this sound level that you can use as a means to attempt to address this. So that's from the professional side of things, or just looking at this from my dealings, knowing how the permitting process works. It's the due diligence of that design team to make sure that the acoustics have been taken into account when these things are designed. And I deal with a lot of large projects, and we deal with loud generators and cooling systems, and that's a part of the design. You look at the acoustics, you take the neighbors into concern. all of
Chad.
which obviously didn't happen
Chad,
as a part of this. Yes, sir.
I think we get it.
Okay, all right, good deal. Okay, good deal. So another, just real
You
quick,
want
just
to wrap her up?
yes, I
Yeah.
will wrap it up.
Okay.
Just from a personal level, we can't sit out in our backyard, all weekend. This goes on all day, all night. As I said, I don't want to repeat what's in my letter. It's stated there. But in addition to that, outside of this, this church, and I did bring these for a purpose. So this is a better visual. So we have all these pictures from, professional pictures of the tower. Here is my house right here. Here's the tower right here. Here's the neighbor here that you'll hear from shortly. So just to put it in a little better visual perspective instead of a whole area map where this sits, that's how close this is. And also look at the height. This is a direct shot into our house. And so, like I said, we can't sit out in our backyards. This never ends. You guys get the point. So I guess what I'm asking here today is to deny this, to not allow this bell to continue, and to make it, if you have the authority, make the church cease operation of this bell until a time that it's been repaired and confirmed to meet the sound level that is required per the city code.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Chad, that's right. Chad covered a lot. If you want to add some new information.
I've had a lot of time to deal with this.
Need your name and address.
Allison Demon, 1507 South 152nd Circle. So mine is more just about the frequency. It's on a church, but instead they're using it like a clock tower. And so I just am fine with them using it for what he stated was religious purposes, which most other churches in the city operate at 6, 12, and 6, call for prayer, and then before religious services. I know the original intent of a clock tower was when people didn't have access to a clock or a watch. We're clearly well past that. So to me, I'm fine with it being used in more of a religious sense instead of being used like a watch.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Allison. Anybody else? No? All right. Close public hearing. Ed, did you want to come back and give any rebuttal? It's up to you. You sure, Ed? No, I'm teasing you.
Yeah. The bells have been Father Tom's deal, so I'm kind of at a loss here. And they're very, yeah.
Understood.
I will say, and I don't think it's a shock to them, but I like the bells. I'm going to give you some history. I grew up and went to church at Cathedral, and Cathedral has a very large bell tower. I'm sure it's iconic to the city. And they rang what this is called the Angelus, and the Angelus rang from the time I was 5 years old until I was much smaller than I am now. And it is a tradition, and it's called the Angelus, and yes, it is a time clock, but it has a deep religious tradition. That said, I don't know how strongly Father feels about ringing the Angelus. And obviously feels very strongly about ringing on as a call to what we call, and you'll see in a letter from another neighbor, as a call to worship before Mass on Saturday and Sunday, and at weddings and funerals. I know those things are. I'm going to use a word that's kind of that's strong. They're not negotiable. We need to be able to do that, and I think Allison said that. It's call to worship, and I don't know about the Angelus. I think it's important to a lot of people. I don't know where we end up with that if we get below 60 decibels, if that is still a problem or not. It sounds like it is for the neighbors. I don't know if it is for the other people. I just don't know. So that's my rebuttal.
All right, Ed.
Very vague.
All right.
Okay, Michael.
Any additional comments, questions? Michael?
Well, I'm not going to add a whole lot. Just for the board's record, there was another reading taken last week that was at 74 or 72.4. So obviously sometimes the weather can affect those readings if the wind's blowing particular direction. But The department feels that there's no justification to support the operation of the bells beyond what the code allows for the maximum sound requirements in the residential district for the 60 decibels. We feel it is something that cannot be supported, and it should be addressed either through some process of sound deadening louvers or the technician that can come out. But we, even on a temporary basis, feel that we can't support any variance to the regulations, and we recommend denial of the request.
Can I ask a question?
You bet. Go ahead.
I understand what the code says about the sound level. Is there anything in the code regarding the frequency?
The quantity.
Well, I mean, what the code says is that if like for impulsive sound, if it repeats 4 or more times in an hour, it's treated as a continuous sound. So that, something like that would, so if it happens just once, then you might be okay with it. But if it happens a certain number of times within an hour, then it's treated as if it's happening continuously.
So carrying that forward, assuming they are successful in getting the overall volume down below 60 decibels or 55 at night, and they limit it to, like, let's say just 1 strike at the hour, that's only 1 during that hour. So that would still be in compliance as opposed to the sequential that they're going through right now that ends up with about 2 dozen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if it has a 1 strike that's over the 60, it would appear to me that it wouldn't violate the code. If it's more than 4 or more times in an hour, that goes over the 60. Yeah.
Not just frequency of any sound. It's over 60.
Yeah. I mean, if it's under 60, then it would comply with code between those hours.
Right.
All right, you done, Dave? Yeah. All right. Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Solongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved to deny 7-0.
It would have been preferable, I think, in my personal opinion, to have said, we'll voluntarily hold this up until, I mean, just in goodwill to the neighbors, and then we wouldn't have to be in the position where we're at by denying a religious entity what they want to do.
Don't shoot the messenger, right?
Yeah.
Yep. We need a motion on the minutes for the pre-meeting and the public meeting for February.
Motion to approve the pre-meeting minutes and the main meeting minutes for February.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Abstain.
Pate?
Abstain.
Solongo?
Abstain.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved for adjournment.
Before I ask a motion for adjournment, I apologize I should have let Dewan go on out the door.
You should have, I was letting go on.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second. Debbie, please record the vote.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris? Pate? Solongo?
Yes.
Rosacker? Mr.
I was
Chair?
just thinking if he,
Yes.
I just thought, don't you want to hear the?
Last one? It was